Countdown, 1, 2, 3. This is like take 5 or something. Every time I get started, Lucy would come in here and it it's just really hard to talk about things, and you're like, the dog is needing a pet. So anyway, biracial. My family is biracial, and that's a really sad word, you know. Biracial means that you're a mixed blood. We used to be called half-breeds, and then we were mixed bloods, and now we're biracial. So, you know, we mixed bloods, biracial, half-breed guys, you know, we're really messed up. Kind of like the buffalo. They don't even have the right name for that, Tonka. But urban Indians, you know, I was raised in Billings, Montana, in the city. I spent a lot of my time on the reservation out in the hills, but not so much with, you know, we didn't have a lot of family left. My grandma was taken to boarding school when she was 4, and a lot of that family, they left the reservation and they never came back. Mixed bloods, biracial tends to go towards, you know, you're white. So it's real important in the native histories to know your family. And so my mother's family, she was white. They're from, their name was Pickering. Strangely enough, when they left the UK, that they had one name. When they landed, they had the name Pickering. So don't know the background on that, but I do know they were Quakers. And one of my English daughters took me up to Pickering. There's a castle there. I thought maybe because my middle name is Pickering, they'd let me in the castle for free. We're still serfs. Whether you're mixed blood or not, you're still serfs. Just a bunch of peasants. So my family, my white family, my mother was an only child, and that family pretty much died off. And so for that family tree, I'm the last of it. And even to have the Pickering name involved, I'm the last one. No, my father's parents, one was Santee, full-blood, and my grandma was Crow. And my grandpa was a physician, and their history is really well known in some of the places. My grandpa was a physician. He traveled to many of the reservations, and he did medical services, delivered many babies, but was well known. So he had always a contingency of friends coming, and my grandma and grandpa, my dad's parents, they lived with us for my first 7 or so years. There is a photograph of a house. It was Mount St. Helens behind there, and it says this house that Scott was born in. But I don't believe that's quite true. I might have been born in that house, but I ended up in a hospital because they did have all of that taken care of. So I was conscious, but I had been in a different state and was trying to get organized, so I really don't know about that. But we had lots and lots of people come to our house, and then when my dad became the liaison officer for the Public Health Service to all the tribes in the West, then we had all of those tribal leaders come to our house for dinner. So I met a lot of tribes. I didn't just meet people from my tribe. I met a lot of important people. So I sort of became more conscious of all of these tribal people as one unit, versus, you know, just my clan or my tribe. But in that time there was no material written that you could actually research and find things. There was a couple of books. Lowy had a book. Um, there was a book by Linderman and Charlie Russell. That was an Old Man Coyote book. Um, and there was Seven Rights of the Sacred Pipe by Joseph Brown, and of course John Neihart's Black Elk series of books. The Black Elk story I have, maybe I'll tell it sometime, but the important thing was there was just nothing really to read. There was a lot of American history about, well, it was actually European history about Native Americans, and that really wasn't serving us as urban Indians. It wasn't serving us. So the movement in the 60s and 70s with the black movement, Red Power came out, and we really began to investigate and research our own background. And thus, the urban Indians became something different than what they were, because before, a lot of our parents no longer cared about the culture or the language. They had already assimilated. So, as my folks, my dad had what was referred to as a Barbie doll, a white woman. He married her, had children, had a successful career. That's one line of history that the urban Indians do share, is that their parents left the reservation and may not have had contact back, but they certainly didn't lose their culture completely. They lost the language in many cases. But for instance, my grandma Fraser, she was taken to boarding school when she was 4 years old, and was not allowed any of the language or customs in her home. That was forbidden. So it was the same for us. So when I got out of boarding school, which isn't the boarding school of nightmares, it was a boarding school of, it wasn't tragedies, it wasn't that negativity, it was a different kind of, it was a being gone from home, being gone from the mountains. It was that kind of lonesome 4 years, but I didn't get abused by physical abuse. I got a lot of mental abuse. But I also was introduced to Quakerism, and I think that was the best part of going to boarding school. However, a side note is there were a lot of lovely people at boarding school, and it's unfortunate because some of our behaviors in those days were not best, they weren't the best things. And thus, when I left boarding school, I really never looked back. I went on, and so I began to investigate into, the culture, and so I went to Klan. Because I lived in Billings, I went to the Klan elders who were, they were my age then. And so there were older people still available. My mom learned the beadwork from Tom Yellowtail's mother and Tom's wife, Susie. So we still had these old people there, and it was still wonderful to sit and listen. And that was the thing. When you went to go see those people, you just sat and listened to them. And you pick up things that you've been taught maybe as a child. So, things that my grandpa Fraser taught me in those 7 years of when I was a kid, and they lived with us, some of those things came back, which one of them was a respect for women. And he always would say at dinner, eat all of the food the women put in front of you. And it meant, it was a blessing. What he was saying is to respect the women. They have brought this together in love. So, as we were growing up, we kept getting all these little pieces from my grandpa and my grandma as well. She remembered some things, but not much. But you really had to go out and you had to go and participate. So when my dad transferred from the Portland office, he then became deputy secretary in the Albuquerque office. And when I was a kid, when he was in the Portland office, we went to watch the men. They netted. They had long poles, and at the end they had nets on them, and the salmon would come up. This was on the Columbia. This was the year before the Shalilo Falls was going to disappear forever, and so this would have been the last year of the salmon harvest in the natural way. So we were invited to that. And when he was in the Albuquerque office, we were invited to Chalico, and these were wonderful ceremonies which were eventually, closed down, or they were lost forever. So I was really lucky that my dad was in the position he was in, and I was allowed to go and see and visit and meet all these incredible people. And then, of course, when he retired, my parents became artists, and so then we went into the Native American art culture, and so we were learning designs. And so you take this urban Indian and you just start saturating his brain with information of cultures, and it awakens things inside. However, there's a couple of things that need to be said. Is that a half-breed's a half-breed. Can't change that. And neither culture accepts you 100%. It wasn't that way before. In my clan grandparents' time, they accepted you, and they accepted non-Indians as well, and non-tribal members, non-clan members, non-family members. They brought into, wonderful ceremonies. And in those ceremonies, people sat and we listened to these old men, and gosh, you just accumulate all this information from them about their reservation and about their homes and their families and their culture, their tribes. You learn about them, but you can't talk. You've got to listen to what they're saying. And my biggest problem, of course, I would ask a question that would tend to last, maybe 100 miles or so. But it was good to take some of these old people on trips, because you could ask these questions and they would, they'd start talking, and it would be like, next thing you're 140 miles down the road, it's folded space on itself, and here you are. But you've been listening to this story. And I have to say, it's a struggle. If you have no connection, it's a struggle. And then you become more of a pan-Indian rather than a tribal member. But if you had an affiliation, that's the one you've got to go and look at. And understand too is that first you'll be accepted, and then you'll be rejected, and then you have to participate and help with different things, with different ceremonies or family events. You've got to contribute as a family member or a tribal member. And a lot of people got upset because people would come to the ceremonies and not contribute. They just came and took. And so, in a lot of sense, we learn all of these things, and then you're struck with the truth. What's the truth? And in my travels up into places that were very remote, into the Arctic, or versus into different places I went, it's really hard now to find people who know, the truth. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I don't know. It is what it is. If you're looking for your roots, you've got to go find the bones. And sometimes the bones aren't, they're not quite clear of flesh. So there's still some maybe pain in that family or struggles in that family, and you have to decide whether you're going to contribute or not. Urban Indians are Indians, but they're urban Indians. We don't have the family connection at home on the res that I have these neighbors. These guys are yelling all the time. And I don't think they know anything but yelling. So they're yelling a lot. That's what I think disturbs Lucy the most, is that we don't know what they're yelling about. So anyway, I just wanted to share some of this history, and my history is not unique. There's a lot of history. From what I understood when I traveled, there are lots and lots of Native people in search and lost, or have found and been stepped on or not stepped on or whatever, and they're still kind of blinded by the stereotype of what they're expecting to find when they find the true Indian. It's not in that philosophy of Indians. If you look at the easiest way to put this is in most spirituality. We see the things, all sacred things. Everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. So when we're looking around and somebody says, "Well, this is a sacred site," well, of course it is. All of them are. And we need to treat all of the places with dignity and respect. And that includes the body. And this pandemic that we're having now is one example of it, is that, it's this understanding of freedom. And my research of Native Americans is that they had an understanding of freedom. The world is never really understood. And it's about the depth of the tribal concept versus the me concept. And in that freedom, we choose to do what's best for the tribe. And then if we choose not to, and we do something just for ourselves, then we have a certain amount of punishment. We can ignore you, we can shun you, or you're banished. And those are all methods that Indians use, and they still use it today. So I caution you, if you're searching for your heritage. There's a lot of different levels and lots of different Indians, and if you weren't born on the res, you really don't know the res, and you don't know all of the internal laughters and jokes and things. But if you live there for a long enough time, you will get it, and they'll respect you if you're respectable. Indian people are really good people, generally speaking. I have been very, very fortunate, and been gifted many, many things from people. For example, I was asked to go and talk to the governor of, I think it was Kansas. I had been in Independence, Missouri, and I was doing a talk on buffaloes. And some women came up and asked me if I'd go visit with their husbands in the prison up at Lansing. So I went up there, and then they asked me to go see the governor. And wow. On our way up to the governor's house, from Independence up to the governor's place in Kansas, we stopped at this man's house on a reservation. And, you know, it was just a normal house, and we went in, and we were visiting, and of course how it's done is, who are you related to, and I know a Crow, do you know him, and I know a Sioux, do you know him, and so on back and forth until we actually get to know who we really are. And so he said, come with me, and we all got up, and the women that were taking me to the governor, he said, no, you sit down, you stay here. And so he and I went out at the back of the house, and there was a nice little cottage back there. Through the trees, there was a cottage back there, and we went back there, and there was a doorway, and through the doorway was a long pole, but there was no door. There was just kind of I think a tarp that was pulled back. But this log was pulled in, and we went inside, and this log was in the middle. There was smoke, some embers going, and he said, this is eternal fire from our tribe. It's been burning since the beginning. You know, and it struck me that moment. You know, the dedication, the dedication to give your life to maintain the fire from the beginning. It's phenomenal. It was a phenomenal moment. And then, of course, I had to go see the governor. So, but I remember that man often, because I look at the worn staircases like out of places I've seen, churches, for example, and you see the stairs. These are dedicated people who've worn these steps away, and as Native people, we kind of dedicated ourselves to the earth now, and it seems like as we walk along, and as the earth is going into summer to fall now, we look at things and wonder, how am I related to this? And to me, that starts talking Indian. That's spirituality. How is this talking to me? What are they saying to me? What do they want? Our job as people, whether you're urban Indian, non-Indian, res Indian, whatever, our job as people is to take care of this earth and to see that our grandchildren will also take care of this earth. You don't learn that in a book. You've got to go out and be in the nature. You've got to go fast on the mountains, and smell the blood of our brothers and sisters that, have been spilled during hunting. We just need to understand our place in this world. And I think I've disturbed the dogs next door in this. So anyway, if you have questions, let me know, and let's talk. Okay, have a good day. Bye. Bye.